what we do here is go back.
Chelsea Football Club had their worst ever season in the 2022-23 season. 1 year on from winning the Champions League in 2021, owner Roman Abramovich had to sell his shares in Chelsea Football Club due to his links to the Russian government and their war with Ukraine. Taking over from him was American Todd Boehly, acquiring the club for over £4 billion. And Chelsea proceeded to go crazy in the summer transfer window, including the signings of Raheem Sterling for £47 million, Kalidou Koulibaly for £33 million, Gabriel Slonina for £8 million, Carney Chukwuemeka for £20 million, Marc Cucurella for £60 million, Cesar Casadei for £16 million, Wesley Fofana for £75 million, Dennis Zakaria on loan, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang on deadline day for £10 million. In total, Chelsea spent £275 million in the transfer window, a Premier League record at the time, meaning that expectations were high going into the new season under established manager Thomas Tuchel. So let's take a look back at how they ended up doing that season. Chelsea began their season away at Goodison Park, where Sterling started throwing it back for Yerry Mina on his debut, and then late in the first half, Chilwell was taken down in the box for a penalty, which Jorginho calmly converted to give Chelsea an opening day win and the perfect start to the new season. In their second game, Chelsea welcomed Tottenham to Stamford Bridge in what was always a heated London derby, and inside just 20 minutes, Cucurella whipped in a corner thumped home by Kalidou Koulibaly to score his first goal for Chelsea. However, the lead didn't last as this bozo Jorginho decided to flick the ball up in his own box, getting dispossessed and allowing Højbjerg to equalise from range, before Tuchel and Conte started screaming in each other's faces. Havertz was up to his usual antics, missing from close range, but then Sterling set up Reece James to get Chelsea back into the lead as Thomas Tuchel went absolutely wild on the touchline. Romero then pulled Cucurella's hair on a late corner, but instead of giving a free kick, the ref gave another corner to Tottenham, and then in the dying seconds, Harry Kane headed home from that corner to make it 2-2 and send the Tottenham fans into jubilation. And whilst the game may have been over, the feud between Conte and Tuchel was far from over, as they both clashed again at full time, with both managers getting sent off after the altercation. Chelsea then went away to Leeds, where Koulibaly picked up a stupid early yellow card, before this absolute bozo Mendy decided to dribble straight into the Leeds United attacker, who slotted it into an open goal. Then just a few minutes later, Harrison whips in a free kick for Rodrigo to head home a second for Leeds. And in the second half, it got even worse for Chelsea, as Dan James's cross was knocked into the path of Jack Harrison to compound Chelsea's misery and make it 3-0. But it got worse for Chelsea as this Walad Koulibaly decided to drag down the attacker and get his second yellow card, completing a truly catastrophic afternoon for Chelsea and a simply embarrassing performance. Chelsea then hosted Leicester City, where once again, two ridiculous challenges by Conor Gallagher resulted in a red card for the second game in a row for Chelsea. However, this time it wouldn't cost them, as Raheem Sterling looped in his first goal for the club early in the second half, before grabbing his second, tapping in at the back post to make it 2-0. A few minutes later, Harvey Barnes smacked one in for Leicester, but Chelsea were able to hold on for their second win of the season. A few days later, Chelsea went away to Southampton in midweek, where Raheem Sterling scored once again to put Chelsea into the lead. But it took just a few minutes for Romeo Lavia to hammer home from the edge of the box and bring the Saints back level. And then before half time, Armstrong picked the ball up in the box and smashed in a second for Southampton to put Chelsea behind, seeing them lose for the second time already this season and placing them 10th in the league. Chelsea's next game was at home to West Ham in a London derby, where Antonio snuck the visitors ahead with a scrappy goal from a corner. But later on, Ben Chilwell found his way in behind the defence to bundle in an equaliser for the hosts and give them hope, before even later Chilwell played it across for Kai Havertz to get his first goal of the season and put Chelsea ahead of 2 minutes to go. However, in the dying seconds, Reece James preposterously headed it into the path of Jared Bowen before Cornet picked it up and smacked in a leveller. The West Ham fans were sent into absolute delirium. However, somehow this was scandalously given as a foul, meaning the goal was ruled out and Chelsea had gotten away with it, gifting them 3 points and taking them up to 5th in the league. Hey yo, you absolute bozo! Why haven't you liked the video yet? Make sure to absolutely bukkake that like button and subscribe whilst you're at it. Thank you. Chelsea had kicked off their Premier League campaign very inconsistently, winning 2 and drawing 1, but picking up 2 very embarrassing losses to relegation favourites. But now they began their Champions League campaign away to Dinamo Zagreb, a game they were very much expected to win. However, early on, Orsic sped away from Wesley Fofana and slotted it past the keeper to put the hosts into the lead, before Hakim Ziyech went on to produce one of the most diabolically hilarious performances of all time. This catastrophic monstrosity of a footballer put in one of the most ludicrous displays ever, continuously nonchalantly smacking the ball into the middle of nowhere for no reason whatsoever, and then hit 2 almost identical free kicks straight into the wall back to back. Chelsea ended up losing the game 1-0, and then the following morning Thomas Tuchel was shockingly sacked as Chelsea manager. I'll be honest, they did have a pretty bad start to the season, but little did this fat American bozo know that things were about to get a whole lot worse. The next day, Chelsea spent £20 million to prize Graham Potter away from Brighton, who had them 4th in the table after a great start to the season, and his first game was at home to Red Bull Salzburg in the Champions League, looking to grab Chelsea's first win in Europe this season. And early in the second half, the ball fell to Raheem Sterling, who curled in the first goal of the Graham Potter era to make it 1-0 to Chelsea. However, with 15 minutes to go, Thiago Silva pulled off a pathetic challenge before the ball was played over to Okafor, who trickled an equaliser in for the visitors, causing Chelsea to drop points in Potter's first game. Potter's first Premier League game began in brilliant fashion as Jordan Ayew whipped in for Edouard to open the scoring for Palace. And then Thiago Silva somehow escaped a red card for this handball. But before half-time, Aubameyang finished on the spin to grab his first goal for Chelsea and get his side back into the game. And in the dying minutes, Gallagher also whacked home his first goal for Chelsea against his former side to win Potter his first game for the club, getting his new manager off to the perfect start in the league. Back in the Champions League, Potter continued his winning ways as Fofana finished off a scrap in the box against Milan. James then crossed it in for Aubameyang, snapping his second goal in 2 games, before Reece James smacked one into the roof of the net to score a comfortable 3-0 win for Chelsea. After a rocky start to the season, it was looking like Potter had Chelsea back on track. Havertz's looping header put Chelsea 1 goal ahead against Wolves in the first half at Stamford Bridge, before Mount and Pulisic linked up to make it 2 for the Blues. And then Broja slapped in a late third to make it 3 league wins in a row for Chelsea. Former Chelsea player Tomori took down Mount in the box to give away a penalty and get himself sent off, with the penalty being coolly converted by Jorginho to put Chelsea ahead again in the Champions League. The ball then fell nicely for Aubameyang to score once again against his former club and secure his side a crucial 3 points. Then away at Villa, this bozo Mings decided to head the ball straight to Mount, who tucked it past Martinez early on, before he thumped in a beautiful free kick to win Chelsea a 5th game on the spin. And now you may be thinking, this season doesn't seem so bad. Chelsea have won 8 out of their first 13 games. They were in the top 4 and they were top of their Champions League group. However, this is where the fun begins. After this game, Chelsea Football Club went on to win just 8 more games in all competitions in the remaining 7 months of the season. The next game was away at Brentford, where the hosts missed a bunch of chances and were unable to break the deadlock in a 0-0 draw. Manchester United were next at Stamford Bridge, where McTominay gave away a late penalty from a corner, with Jorginho seemingly winning the game for Chelsea as he slotted home. But of course Chelsea couldn't hold on, as an even later Casemiro header somehow snuck past Kepa to rescue United a point. Back in the Champions League, Kovacic slapped in from the edge of the box away at Salzburg. But then the ball was whipped in for Adamu to equalise, and Gritty on their ass.
I say right foot creep, walking with that heater.
However, Havertz had the last laugh with this absolute beauty to seal Chelsea another 3 points in the Champions League. Potter then went away to his former side Brighton, where Thiago Silva got away with some early tomfoolery with this clearance off the line. But he wouldn't get away with this lackluster pass, as he decided to run all the way out of position, leaving Trossard wide open, who left Kepa looking like a bozo before slotting it into the corner just 5 minutes in. It got worse for Chelsea, as Loftus-Cheek produced his marvellous poacher's finish into his own flipping net. Chalobah then decided he wanted to get in on the action too, scoring an own goal as well to make it 3-0. Havertz headed in to pull one back for Chelsea in the second half, but then Kovacic pulled off one of the most discombobulated passes of the century before Thiago Silva kicked the ball like a fairy, allowing Enciso a second chance with his shot falling to Pascal Gross, who made it 4. A truly embarrassing defeat for Chelsea, who got absolutely washed in this game. Chelsea went behind once again to Dinamo Zagreb as Petkovic headed home from close range in the Champions League. However, Sterling picked up in the box and made himself some space to equalise for Chelsea, before pulling off this absolutely diabolical miss from close range. But just a minute later, Dennis Zakaria scored in his debut to give Chelsea a win in their final group stage game and secure a top spot for them. Next was top of the table Arsenal visiting Stamford Bridge, who completely played Chelsea off the park in this game. This game might have been the first indicator of just how far off the top Chelsea were, and Arsenal eventually took one of their chances as Gabriel tapped in Saka's corner on the line, before celebrating directly in front of former Arsenal player Aubameyang. The game somehow only finished 1-0 and left Chelsea 13 points behind their London rivals in the table in November. And it didn't get any better for them in the Carabao Cup, as a Riyad Mahrez free kick put Man City 1-0 up at the Etihad, before he had a shot deflected into the path of Julian Alvarez to knock Chelsea out of the cup in their first game. Chelsea's final game before the mid-season break for the 2022 World Cup was away at Newcastle, who have become top 4 contenders for the first time in 10 years this season. And once more, Chelsea got absolutely dominated and were lucky to not find themselves 2 or 3 goals behind before Almiron worked his way into the path of Joe Willock, who thumped it in for Newcastle to finally take the lead. It was a rocket that saw Chelsea fall down to 8th going into the World Cup break. A lot would have to change for Chelsea to get back into European contention in the second half of the season, but at least the break gave Graham Potter time to work on his squad. And in Chelsea's first game back, Sterling laid it across for Havertz to slide them ahead against Bournemouth, before setting up Mount, who placed it nicely into the bottom corner to secure a 2-0 win for Chelsea in their first game back. The ball then fell nicely for Sterling to smash Chelsea ahead of 19th place Nottingham Forest in their first game of 2023, but in the second half, Aurier swiveled to level the scores and grab Forest a point. Chelsea then welcomed Manchester City to Stamford Bridge, looking to avenge their Carabao Cup defeat, but Grealish played it across for Mahrez to score once again against Chelsea, this time in a 1-0 victory. But Chelsea had another opportunity to beat Man City, as they faced them in the FA Cup third round in their very next game, where again they were hit by a Riyad Mahrez bullet free kick, and from then on they obviously had no chance. Havertz decided to punch the ball in the box to give away a penalty, which Alvarez managed to sneak past Kepa to make it 2, before Walker cut it back for Foden to tap in a third before half time. And then in the second half, this bambling bozo Koulibaly gave away another penalty, which Mahrez hammered in for his 4th goal against Chelsea that season, and City's 4th goal in the game to secure a comfortable 4-0 victory. And a result that meant Chelsea were knocked out of both the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup in their first game, whilst being 8th in the Premier League. It was truly looking like a hopeless season. However, it was the January transfer window, and you know what that means. After breaking the Premier League spending record in the summer transfer window, Chelsea Football Club decided to do it again in the January window, spending a whopping £300 million, including a record £100 million on midfielder Enzo Fernandez, £60 million on Mikhailo Mudryk, £35 million on Benoit Badiashile, and £30 million for Noni Madueke, as well as a £10 million 6-month loan fee for João Felix from Atletico Madrid, taking the overall spending for the season to £575 million Great British pounds. And somehow, every time they spent more money, they somehow managed to get even worse. It's actually ridiculous. Against Fulham, Havertz continued to be an absolute donkey before former player Willian smacked in an opener to put Chelsea behind once again. There was some hope for Chelsea as Koulibaly scuffed in an equaliser on the rebounds, just for this deplorable, catastrophic bozo João Felix to get himself sent off on his debut. Firstly, he pulled off the scandalous touch before following it up with a tackle from the depths of hell. It's genuinely just ludicrous how every game it managed to get more comical. Honestly, you couldn't write a script this good if you tried. And then Kepa decided to run into no man's land as Vinicius headed in the winner for Fulham, giving them their first win against Chelsea for 17 years. Chelsea finally got back to winning ways as Ziyech whipped it in for Havertz to head in against Crystal Palace, giving them just their second win in 9 games and keeping them inside the top 10. Chelsea then went away to Liverpool, who themselves were down in 9th place having a terrible season. And this game basically summed up both teams' seasons. A tragic affair which ended 0-0. However, Chelsea did have one spark through Mikhailo Mudryk on his debut causing problems, and would end up being a terrific signing. So terrific in fact, that he's bored of dominating football and is considering becoming an Olympic sprinter instead. And Chelsea ended up with back-to-back 0-0 draws as both themselves and Fulham were unable to break the deadlock, including when Fofana literally went round the goalkeeper and was still unable to flip and score. Honestly, I don't know how these guys spent £500 million in one season and came out of it without a single competent striker. It's genuinely bewildering. However, away at West Ham, Chelsea's new signings finally came good as Enzo Fernandez and João Felix linked up to put the 1-0 in front. But it didn't take long for Emerson to bundle home an equaliser at the back post, and it was looking like Chelsea would drop points again. But then in the dying minutes, Mount was through with Ziyech wide open at the back post. But instead of playing a simple pass to Ziyech, this bozo decided to cut it back to the edge of the box and the chance was gone. And to be fair, this bum Ziyech probably would have missed anyway, as he scored a grand total of 0 goals in 24 games for Chelsea that season. Now, Chelsea may have been 10th and way off the pace in the Premier League, but they still had the Champions League round of 16 to play. And we all know Chelsea just had that Champions League juice, where they can randomly turn up and just win the whole competition. However, in the 62nd minute, Adeyemi picked up the ball in his own half and went head-to-head with Enzo Fernandez, who is absolutely useless, and got blitzed as Adeyemi eased past him and the goalkeeper to slot in the only goal of the game for Dortmund. And yet another loss for Chelsea, but it was fine, as next up Chelsea had bottom place Southampton at home, who were utterly useless this season. However, an early Ward-Prowse stunner put them 1-0 up at Stamford Bridge, and once again, Chelsea's bunch of catastrophic, disorientated bozos in attack were unable to put the ball in the back of the net, and they somehow managed to lose the easiest game of the whole season. They followed this up with a trip to Tottenham, where Ziyech decided to slap Emerson in the face, but fortunately escaped a red card after a VAR review, meaning he remained on the pitch. And Tottenham made the most of this advantage, as Skip beat João Felix to the ball, and then slapped it past his absolute buffooning goal, before Kane finished off a flick on at the back post later on to seal Tottenham a 2-0 win in the derby, and also meant that Chelsea now had 0 wins from their last 6 games with only 1 goal scored. Matter of fact, they had just 2 wins from the last 15 games. A truly embarrassing return, and surely Graham Potter's job was now under great pressure. But in their next game, something truly shocking happened. Chelsea were actually playing well for once, creating a catalogue of chances against Leeds at home. And then finally, in the 53rd minute, Chelsea had their moment, as Wesley Fofana towered above the Leeds defence to head in just Chelsea's second goal in the space of 2 months. It was a truly momentous moment in Chelsea's season, sealing them a 1-0 victory to take them from 10th to 10th in the Premier League table. And now that Chelsea were officially in good form, it was the perfect time for them to play their Champions League round of 16 second leg against Dortmund at Stamford Bridge. And the pure passion and venom that Chelsea played with in this game was stupendous, coming close on a multitude of occasions, but still somehow unable to break the deadlock. Until finally the ball was played into Raheem Sterling, who pulled off the most magnificent fake shot of all time to send both the defenders and himself before he stumbled through for a rebound, which he hammered into the back of the net to get Chelsea back on level terms in aggregate. And less than a minute into the second half, this Dortmund bozo handballed it in the box, handling Chelsea a penalty, which Havertz stepped up for and flippin' missed! This absolute donkey couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo. But then, after an absolute miracle from the heavens above, Chelsea were given the opportunity to retake the penalty. And of course, the most clinical striker and the most prolific football squad of all time wasn't going to miss this time, putting Chelsea 2 goals in front, and somehow Make-A-Wish FC had made it to the Champions League quarter-finals. And now we were going to see a different Chelsea. This wasn't the same team that dropped points to Leeds, Tottenham, Southampton, Dinamo Zagreb, RB Salzburg, Brentford, Man United, Brighton, Arsenal, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Man City, Fulham, Liverpool, Fulham again, West Ham, Southampton, and Tottenham. This was the team who had a 100% record in the last 2 games and were now Champions League quarter-finalists. And Leicester felt the full blow of their wrath as Chilwell smacked in a body against his former club to put Chelsea into yet another lead. Chelsea were really starting to get used to being winners now, just as Patson Daka whacked in an equaliser to draw Leicester level. But now, Chelsea had discovered a winning mentality and they no longer gave up after conceding, as Enzo scooped it up for Havertz to delightfully chip the keeper and restore Chelsea's lead. And now Chelsea were feeling extra cheeky as Kovacic hit home a scissor kick to wrap up a 3-1 victory, as Chelsea scored 3 goals in the game for just the 3rd time all season, in a massive win that took Chelsea from 10th all the way up to 10th in the Premier League table. And the fight to get into the European places was well and truly on, and Potter's winning formula continued as Felix picked up the ball on the edge of the box and finished in the bottom corner to put Chelsea 1 up against Everton. Decoy headed in an equaliser for Everton from a corner, but as we already know, that doesn't matter because this Chelsea team does not lie down, as Reece James lied down to win Chelsea a late penalty. Then Havertz stopped and slotted home the penalty to put Chelsea back into the lead. And now no one could question them anymore. 4 wins in a row and Champions League quarter-finalists. They were basically the best team in Europe at this point, except there was one problem. Ellis Sims skipped past the abominable bozo Kalidou Koulibaly to level the scores in the 89th minute, and Chelsea's rich vein of form was finally over. Cucurella then played a beautifully cushioned header through to Ollie Watkins, who dinked it over Kepa and put Villa ahead at Stamford Bridge. Mudryk then pulled off the finesse shot of dreams to make sure he maintained his impressive 0% shot conversion rate, before McGinn whips the final dagger into Graham Potter's corpse to secure a 2-0 win for Villa, as the Chelsea manager was finally sacked and put out his misery. Chelsea's players then had the chance to prove it was all Potter's fault that they were performing atrociously this season, as they faced Liverpool at home, who were also having a terrible season of their own, and they did exactly the opposite by missing a bunch of sitters yet again. But then, it happened. Chelsea had the opportunity to finally open the scoring as Havertz was through 1-on-1. Of course he missed it, but the ball bounced off him and into the net, and Chelsea were 1-0 up, with a chance to go just a point behind Liverpool. Except this bozo elbowed the ball to go into the goal, and obviously it was ruled out for handball, and the game finished 0-0. But Chelsea and Todd Boehly had one more trick up their sleeve. With 9 Premier League games to go and the Champions League quarter-finals still to play, Chelsea Football Club decided to rehire their greatest ever player and their 16th best manager in Premier League history. What could possibly go wrong? And in Lampard's first game back, Mateus Nunes hammered in this absolute bang on the volley as Chelsea lost yet again. But the Premier League was already a write-off. What really mattered was the Champions League, where Chelsea faced the current holders Real Madrid in the quarter-finals, and the first leg was away at the Bernabeu. Now Chelsea may have been completely unserious in the Premier League, but as we've seen in the Champions League they were a different animal, slapping up AC Milan home and away, and then knocking out Dortmund. And this time it was no different as João Felix went through and did absolutely nothing before Benzema tapped in to make it 1-0 just 20 minutes in. Chilwell then got himself sent off in the second half, before Asensio finished from the edge of the box to give Chelsea a mountain to climb at Stamford Bridge. Back in the Premier League, Chelsea faced Brighton at home, where Conor Gallagher's strike was deflected for the first goal of Lampard's second era and Chelsea's first goal for 4 games. But before half-time, Welbeck headed in from a cross to equalise for Brighton. And then in the second half, Enciso picked up the ball and unleashed an absolute rocket for Brighton to leave Stamford Bridge with all 3 points. Meaning Chelsea's season came all down to this: the Champions League quarter-final second leg against Real Madrid. They were 2-0 down in aggregate, but so many times before Chelsea have done the impossible in the Champions League. And now was their time to step up and do it again. And in the first half, the ball was chipped into Havertz to pull one back for Chelsea with a header past Courtois to give Chelsea hope and spark Stamford Bridge into action. And then in the second half, Havertz was through again and chipped over Courtois, but his shot hit the crossbar, just for it to fall onto the head of Timo Werner to do the impossible and level the scores of his first Chelsea goal of the season. Somehow Chelsea had brought it level and were now heading for extra time. And with just 5 minutes to go, Pulisic found space in the box and cut it back for Mason Mount to complete Chelsea's greatest ever comeback. From 2-0 down, Chelsea had turned it round and knocked out the mighty Real Madrid 3-2 on aggregate. It seemed impossible, and that's because it was. I lied, it was all an illusion. Werner wasn't even at the club anymore. In reality, Chalobah completely missed the ball as Rodrigo got in behind, played it across the box as Fofana decided to wipe out Thiago Silva, and then Vinicius played it back to Rodrigo, who converted from close range to make it 1-0, before Valverde left Mudryk on the floor and laid it on a plate for Rodrigo to tap in his second, and still a 4-0 aggregate win for Real Madrid. And yet again, Chelsea were left absolutely humiliated. Chelsea were out of the Champions League, but still had 7 more games to embarrass themselves in the Premier League, with Azpilicueta producing a wonderful finish into his own net against Brentford, before Mbeumo cut inside and smashed home a second for the visitors and completed another 2-0 home loss for Chelsea. Next, Chelsea went away to a vulnerable Arsenal side, who had just bottled the league and were on a run of 4 games without a win. But obviously they couldn't capitalise as they let Ødegaard score early on, and then they let Ødegaard score again, making it 2-0, before allowing this absolute calamity of a goal to happen, with 4 of their players on the flipping floor when Gabriel Jesus finishes them off. These guys were genuinely defending like they were stuck in mud or something. In the second half, an absolute miracle happened, as Madueke snuck in behind for Chelsea to score just their 2nd goal in 8 games. But their fate was already sealed, as Lampard lost 6 games in a row on his return to Chelsea. It has to be the worst start a manager has ever had, man. It's ridiculous. Gallagher headed Chelsea in front early on away at Bournemouth, but obviously it didn't last, as Vina slapped in a beauty to bring the host level again. However, the entire footballing world was shocked as later on Badiashile converted from a free kick to put Chelsea 2-1 ahead. And then even later, Sterling glided through to set up João Felix, who wrapped up Chelsea's first 3 points since March. Normality was restored at Stamford Bridge, as Mendy completely missed the ball, allowing Awoniyi to head into an open net. But then in the second half, the ball fell for Sterling to score his first Premier League goal since New Year's Day, and lightning struck twice, as Sterling sent his man before curling in a banger to put Chelsea ahead for the first time in the game. Obviously it wouldn't last though, as a few minutes later, Awoniyi scored another header to grab Forest a crucial point, and yet another game without a win for Chelsea. Their next game was away at the Champions, where honestly it was a miracle they only lost 1-0, as Cole Palmer set up Alvarez to tuck home inside 12 minutes. And Chelsea remained in Manchester as they faced Man United at Old Trafford in their penultimate game, where Mudryk came up clutch again to maintain his 0% conversion rate for Chelsea. Honestly, how insufferably bad do you have to be to miss this, man? Anyway, Casemiro headed United in front after 6 minutes, before Havertz decided to give Mudryk a run for his money for most discombobulated attacker in this dreadful Chelsea team. And then before half-time, Sancho laid it across to Martial to tap in a second for United. Bruno Fernandes made a fall out of Fofana in the second half, who took him down for a penalty, which he obviously converted to make it 3, before Fofana gave it away to Bruno again, and set up Rashford, who left Fofana looking like the biggest bozo in Manchester, then finishing Chelsea off with a 4th. João Felix scored a consolation goal in the last minute, but Chelsea were well and truly battered in this game, suffering a result that saw them fall to 12th in the league. Chelsea's final game of the season was at home to Newcastle United, who opened the scoring early on as Gordon grabbed his first goal for the club. Sterling then forced an own goal to Kieran Trippier in what proved to be Chelsea's final goal of this truly diabolical season. The game finished 1-1, and Chelsea ended the season 12th in the Premier League, finishing on 44 points with just 38 goals scored, their least points and goals scored ever in a Premier League season, in what has to be one of the most embarrassing seasons ever. Honestly, if it wasn't for Manchester United last season, it would have been the worst ever. £500 million spent, and they finished in the bottom half and went trophyless. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram and on TikTok. In a bit, G.